All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Ward. I'm the admissions director here at Brophy. I think a lot of you I've met before in some form, maybe doing some Zoom neighborhood get-togethers, or you may have come by campus for a tour. I will also say, if you have not had the chance to come to campus and get a tour, make sure you do schedule that, and we can show you around campus. We're pretty booked this month. We have this week and next week, and we start finals on Wednesday, so we're booking into January. But I'd love to have you come by campus if you haven't seen and walked around campus yet. Again, thank you for doing this. We typically do a seminar like this at our testing in January, but we want to get a head start and kind of use the technology at our fingertips. And so thank you for getting on board, and special thank you to Shelly. You guys all of you will know Shelly from all the emails and things that come out of this office, but for her for setting this up and everybody else that's on today. Again, this is to talk a little bit about our financial aid program and our tuition and all the things that it does, and provide you with opportunities to ask questions about our process. I do want to introduce a few people that are online with us that are going to help with the presentation today. And so the screen in front of you, myself, Shelly, who has worked with me in admissions for the last 9 years, also had 3 boys go through Brophy. I had a son that went through Brophy. Delia, whose son graduated last year and is a current sophomore here. So calling our office is a great way to get information about just school. A lot of questions about classes and school life. We can all answer those questions for you. Delia is going to be working with Jonathan Landanya tonight, who is our Director of Student Advocacy and Outreach. And he's also a Spanish speaker, so we're going to have a separate meeting in Spanish today. So Jonathan is a Brophy grad from 2010 and has worked at Brophy on the Alumni Service Corps. So he did a year of service and then has been on Brophy's campus since then. So thank you, Jonathan, for being here. Nick Shimon, Brophy grad from 06, just recently took over his job as the executive director of our Brophy Community Foundation. He will speak to you about what that community foundation does. Those people who work with him in his office, Carol Brown, son who graduated here, and Heather Chapman also has a son at Brophy, and I think others on the way. But Heather and Carol work with Nick Shimon. And then Jill Zimmerman is our Chief Financial Officer, and Ellen McCoy works in the business office with Jill, and they manage the business side of Brophy and are here to answer any questions that you may have. So we're going to go through, I'm going to push this off to Shelly in a moment, but what we're going to talk about is on the agenda here. So we'll talk a little bit about financial aid program and the foundation, our organizations, their funding, and give you opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you for being with us tonight. And please come by Brophy if you have any questions, or give us a call. With that, Shelly, on to you. Oh, hold on. She's emailing us a link to a family member. So I'll tell you, from this perspective, Shelly, we could go in here a second, is very, very fortunate to be here. This is my 27th year on campus and my 23rd year in the admissions office. So if there's one year that's been a change, it's been this one. And as we kind of navigate through a COVID pandemic world and admissions, I do want to thank all of those I work with, Shelly and Delia in particular, for all the work they do to allow me to go talk and give tours of campus. So thank for the work they do. I tend to be the dreamer, and I can never figure out how to get things done. And that's why I have Shelly and Delia to make sure that happens. And so this has been a very special place for me and a very special place for my son who went through here. And I hope that you all have an opportunity to be a part of this. So, Shelly,
I'm ready. Hold on. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. We are going to have a pretty busy evening and trying to cover a lot of information. Different people are going to pop in and out of the screens, so I will be talking and then handing it off to other people and then coming back. So hopefully we'll get all your questions answered. You can put your questions in the chat box. In addition, you can always stay after the meeting and we'll try and answer your questions afterwards. And besides that, if you don't feel comfortable asking the questions in this environment, which we totally understand since everyone has, unique situations when it comes to financial situations, you can just always call our office, talk to us on the phone, come in and talk to us. So we know that tonight's going to be mostly general information, answering general questions. We're happy to talk to you offline about your personal situation. So with that, before we kind of jump into financial aid, we find it helpful to actually talk about tuition first and how Brophy is a tuition-based school and what tuition covers. So for this, I'm going to hand off to Jill Zimmerman and Ellen McCoy. Jill, are you there?
I am. Can everybody hear me? Excellent. Well, thank you for the nice introduction.
Unmute yourself, Jill.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Is there a password to get into this thing?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. So my name's Jill Zimmerman, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Brophy. And I'd like to also introduce Mrs. Ellen McCoy, who is our Billing and Financial Aid Coordinator. Ellen, are you on as well?
I am. Hi, everybody.
There she is. Excellent. Well, we will be the two folks that you deal with when you have questions regarding tuition or financial aid. So it's nice to meet all of you virtually tonight. So let's start with just a few facts related to tuition here at Brophy. So first of all, the tuition, the rate for tuition is set annually every year. It's voted on by our Board of Trustees, and that's usually set around the February timeframe each year. When we say we have one rate, that means that you may be coming from a school where there are discounted rates depending on how many students you have enrolled in a school, or whether you are in a particular parish or not, Catholic or non-Catholic, etc. That doesn't apply here at Brophy. We have one rate. So every student is charged the same amount of tuition, whether you're a freshman or a senior, Catholic student or not. This year's rate, so you have a frame of reference for the 2021 school year, our tuition this year is $16,400. That rate was set last year in February by our trustees, and each year it increases typically about 2 to 3%, trying to continue to cover our costs each year as costs rise each year. So what does tuition cover? Tuition covers all school-related costs, any retreats that are part of your son's school experience, any required service programs, and then a number of miscellaneous types of fees, like you don't pay extra for a yearbook fee or a separate graduation fee. That tuition covers all of those types of activities. What tuition does not cover includes, first of all, the new student fee or the deposit on your tuition. So the new student fee is $75, which is paid the first year only, and your tuition deposit is $450. So for an incoming student, that's $525. And so your deposit and that new student fee are not covered by financial aid. If you do end up getting financial aid, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this one fee, the new student fee and the deposit each year, is each family's responsibility. Lunch is also not covered by tuition. That's a common question, oddly enough. But lunch is not covered. We do certainly have food service operations here on campus that are fantastic, and a number of boys bring their own lunch, but lunch isn't included. Summer school, which is an entirely separate program. There are separate fees for that, so that's not included in the school year tuition. Immersion trips. If your son goes on an immersion trip to Peru or Northern Arizona, etc., those trips have their own fees associated with them that are related to the cost to run that trip. And then finally, things like PE uniforms or athletic gear, athletic fees related to a specific sport, those are not covered by tuition. Those are separate. So tuition, as far as payment plans, we have a number of different options that are available for families. Tuition can be paid annually in one lump sum, and that would be paid due and payable by August 1st each year. We have a semi-annual payment plan, which would require two payments, one due on July 1st and one due on December 1st each year. And then we do have a monthly payment plan, which it requires 10 monthly payments from the months of June through March each school year. And how do we manage everyone's tuition and your accounts? We manage them through a system called FACTS. Many of you may be familiar with FACTS already if you have used it at your elementary schools. But FACTS is both a tuition management system as well as a financial aid system. So for applying for financial aid, you do that in the FACTS system, just in the same place where you can see your tuition that is charged and what your balance is. And then finally, the last couple bullet points at the bottom are important to note because there are additional costs related to them. So all Brophy students receive a MacBook Air prior to starting their freshman year here at Brophy. The MacBook Air costs roughly $2,000, and we do have payment plans that are available for that, or we have financial aid that can help cover the cost of the MacBook Air if you qualify. That $2,000 either has to be paid or a financial aid application in place prior to picking it up before the start of the fall semester. So in early August, that balance has to be settled. Now, I will tell you, it seems like a large upfront cost. However, that MacBook Air probably covers 90 to 95% of students' book costs. So instead of buying textbooks and workbooks and things like that, the MacBook Air will essentially replace those other book costs. Also, that upfront cost, it's for the entire 4 years. So your son keeps that computer and it's theirs. They utilize it for all 4 years. It also includes some insurance and warranty costs built into that $2,000 cost. So if anything happens to the MacBook, we do have a way to get it repaired for your student. Finally, last bullet point here is there may be some very small miscellaneous book costs that are not captured here. For example, if your student is in an English class and they're reading a specific Shakespeare work and the teacher wants them to be reading a specific version, there may be a small book cost for that. But otherwise, we've talked about everything that's covered by tuition here. Ellen, anything that you want to add that I missed?
No, I don't think so. The one thing I did want to clarify, when Jill said the tuition for this year is $16,400, that does actually include the deposit, but we're saying tuition doesn't cover the deposit because there's no financial aid for the deposit, and it does have to be paid up front. So it's kind of separate, but the whole $16,400 includes the deposit plus your monthly tuition payment. So when our trustees will set the tuition rate, it will be your monthly tuition payment plus the deposit, but the deposit is never covered by financial aid and it does have to be paid up front.
Great point. Thanks, Ellen.
Okay, ready to move on, Jill?
Yep, you bet.
Okay. So we're going to spend most of our evening talking about the Brophy Financial Aid Program, which we're very proud of here. The goal of our program is to provide a Catholic Jesuit education to as many deserving young men, actually men and women, as possible. Our program is designed to provide aid to boys with verified financial need. And the program of the financial aid process in terms of application and awarding of the dollars is overseen by our business office by Jill and Ellen, who you just met. The decisions are made by a committee. It's not where your application and all your numbers get put into a computer and it spits out a dollar amount. They look at your application on a case-by-case basis, whatever you can provide to them in terms of your financial need. If you have a special situation, the more transparency, the better. The more we know about your family situation, the better the financial aid committee can make a decision that's appropriate. So our budget this current school year was $6 million in financial aid. Now that was based on when we started the school year in terms of the applications that families made to us last March, April timeframe. And then, of course, we know that our lives all changed around that same time. And over the spring and summer months, many of our families lost jobs, were put in a situation where rent, mortgages were difficult to manage. And then, of course, on top of that, tuition. And just, things out of their control because of COVID. So we also instituted an emergency COVID financial fund over the last 6 months that has provided aid to many, many of our families on a somewhat short-term basis. But going forward, we will see how things happen over, the next 6 months as we kind of enter into the next phase of financial aid applications and planning. So the financial aid program has 3 parts to it, and we're going to talk about each one of those. All of this information that we're talking about is online on our website. I did send out in the announcement about this seminar that you could download some documents ahead of time if you'd like. Everything we're talking about is online in a document. I'm also happy to send out these slides tomorrow if that would be helpful to families. So the 3 parts are, the main piece is the Grant in Aid program, which is tuition. So when you apply for financial aid, if your application is accepted and then that you have verified financial need, you will be provided a Grant in Aid dollar amount. And that is a dollar amount that is taken off your tuition. It is not a loan, it is a grant. So we are going to reduce your responsibility for tuition by X amount of dollars based on your financial aid application. With that grant comes a component called the Work Study Grant. And that is a program we have here on Brophy that allows a student to have an active part in helping pay their tuition, where they work off a piece of their tuition. So let's see, for families who came here to the open house, you saw many, many boys working, giving tours, working behind tables, directing, helping do check-in. Quite a few of those boys who were working that day were actually quote unquote working. And the time they spent on Brophy's campus that day was actually credited at a dollar amount per hour to work off a grant that they earned as part of the financial aid application. So if you receive a grant for financial aid, you will also receive a portion of a work study grant, which is the responsibility of your son to work off over the school year. We have a wonderful work-study program director here at Brophy who will work with your son to make sure that he gets that done by, I believe it's May 1st. So they have the whole school year to complete those hours. And there are so many opportunities for them to do that. There's never a shortage of opportunities. So whether they are helping with an open house, whether they're working a track meet, whether they're, Mr. Ward had a meeting today with a school on the west side, and we need some students to help represent Brophy at this virtual high school fair. And so the boys who spent the hour helping our office promote Brophy received work study credit. So that is a component that comes with financial aid. And then the third piece is the MacBook Air grant. So that's the computer we talked about, Jill talked about a few minutes ago. If you receive at least 50% of your tuition in a grant, so you qualify for at least 50% of tuition, you will receive the MacBook Air grant, which will cover the entire cost of the technology fee, the $2,000. So when you apply for financial aid, they will automatically take into account the work study piece and the MacBook Air piece. So they're not separate applications. You apply once and they will provide a package to you and show you what we are capable of doing to help your family. So I hope that makes sense. I think we already talked, we talked about what tuition covers. This is talking about what financial aid covers. So again, the grant covers tuition. And so when you get a financial aid grant, it is taking money off of your tuition bottom line. It can be used to also cover clubs on campus if there's a fee associated with a club, some sports, and also some school-related travel. It can also be used to cover summer school for students who are returning. So not for incoming freshmen, so not for next summer, but once your son is a student as a freshman, and he decides to go to summer school as a sophomore, financial aid can cover summer school, sophomore year, junior year, senior year, or a portion of it. We also do provide a payment plan for summer school, just as a sort of side FYI. And we will, let's see, also, oh yeah, the payment plan is also available for the tuition deposit that Ellen was mentioning before. So we talked about how everyone pays a tuition deposit of $450 plus the $75 new student fee. That is not covered by financial aid, as Ellen mentioned, but there is a payment plan available. So once your son is accepted in February and you want to register, if you would like a payment plan over, I think we do 4 payments. We can work that out with the business office. Ellen, is that right? 4 payments for the payment plan for tuition deposit?
That is correct. Four payments. I automatically set up in payments, but you don't have to. You can pay it all at once if you want, but it's automatically set up in 4 payments.
Great. Everyone can apply for financial aid. They are going to look at your financial aid or your financial situation, and I'll get into that in a minute. But everyone is welcome to apply. Everything is confidential. This information does not get shared beyond the financial aid committee and the business office. So even our office as admissions, we are not part of that financial aid decision. It is done by a different group of people. So your son's admissions application, we do not look at whether you are able to afford Brophy or pay for Brophy. We're just looking at your son and will he be a great fit here on campus. For those of you online who are coming from a Catholic school, you have probably in the past applied to CEA for financial aid. That is not the case here at Brophy. You will just apply to the Brophy Financial Aid Program. Correct, Ellen? All right.
I'm sorry, Shelley, I was reading
just saying that they do
that
not-
message and I missed what you were saying.
I was just saying they do not apply to CEA. So the families who are coming from the Catholic schools do not do an application to CEA anymore.
Not through CEA. Unfortunately, Brophy is Jesuit rather than diocesan, and CEA is for diocesan schools. So you do not apply for CEA through CEA for Brophy.
So when you apply for financial aid, we're going to talk about the timeline in a minute. It's obviously a snapshot in time as far as what your situation is, what your job is, the income you're making, your expenses. We understand particularly this year was very pronounced that there was, for many families, a change of circumstance with COVID-19. So we do have a process in place if your circumstances change. Job loss is probably the most common one. If that happens during the school year and you've either applied for financial aid and didn't get it, or you applied for financial aid and got X amount of dollars and now you are in need of more, you can just contact the business office and there is a process in place for you to provide what we call a change of circumstance and to have your application reevaluated. Okay. So timeline, right now our focus is on the boys' admissions application, not financial aid. While I understand it's of importance to you in terms of thinking about it, there's actually nothing for you to do in terms of applying for Brophy financial aid at this time. We're doing this seminar now so you can start to get your ducks in a row in terms of documentation. You can start thinking about the deadlines, but there's actually nothing for you to do in terms of filling out an application. The first thing you can do would be on February 26th. So that's the magic day in your calendar at 4 o'clock when your son can log into his account to find out the admissions decision. So for boys who are accepted, the financial aid application will also open up late in the afternoon on February 26th if you want to get started right away. The priority deadline is March 31st to get your application in and all your documents that are required up into the system. So if you get everything in by March 31st, then we promise to let you know by, sorry, I gotta look at my notes here, April 23rd, what the financial aid decision will be, what the amount of dollars you will get. Our regular deadline is April 15th, and if you do it by April 15th, we will let you know by May 28th. But it is sort of a process that's very efficient so that as your application's coming in, they are making decisions. They're not holding it all, for one big sit-down meeting. It's a continuous basis of decision-making. One of the most common questions that comes in is, well, if I get my application in first, do I get more money? And we do not work it that way. We look at each application and try to fully fund what the need is. And if you get it in on February 27th versus April 15th, there is no difference in the amount of money you will get because you got in first in line. We will look at your full application and provide you the funds that we can provide you regardless of which date you send it in within that window. There is no fee to apply as long as you get it in by April 15th. After April 15th, there is a late fee that is assessed by fax of $35. What you can do ahead of time before February 26th is start to get your little shoebox full of documents ready that you're going to upload to the fax system once it opens. The most important being your tax return. So for those of you that like to get your tax return in early, you can get your application done early. If you wait till April 15th, that's fine. We can, you can still do your application on April 15th, but we are going to require your income tax return, W-2s, 1099s, if that's how you show your income. And then it's going to ask for a variety of statements as far as your rent or mortgage, credit card payments, car payments, medical expenses, and then things like stocks, bonds, CDs. So one of the documents that's on the website is a document called Financial Aid Timeline and Checklist, and it covers all the information that you see on this slide in more detail. It gives you more detail as far as documents that they're going to be looking for, as well as more detail on those dates of the timeline. Ellen, is there anything you want to jump in there about the timeline or the checklist?
No, that pretty much covers it. Because we ask for all this information, clearly financial aid is not based strictly on your income. There's a lot of questions on the financial aid application that have to do with your current financial situation that isn't necessarily income. For instance, do you own a home? Do you own more than one home? Do you own cars? How much do you owe on them? How do you pay your insurance? So there's just a lot of things. I know a lot of people like to say, well, okay, I make this amount of money. Is it even worth it for me to apply? And the answer is always absolutely, because so much more than just income is taken into consideration. So we would encourage anybody who has any question about the possibility of getting some financial assistance to go ahead and apply.
Thanks, Ellen. Some of the factors that they look in besides the ones Ellen was talking about also include, the number of people in your family, how many dependents you have in your family. Another item is also private school tuition that you are currently paying. So if you have younger children in Catholic grammar school, or you have a student down at ASU, they do look at also tuition that you're currently paying for students outside of Brophy. That's correct, Ellen, right? College tuition is also considered?
Yes, that is also
okay.
considered.
Thanks.
And one other thing, if after you filled out the application, you feel like, well, they didn't ask about something else. If you feel like there's something that is important to your financial aid situation that is not covered on the application, there is a space where you can give us all the information that you feel like is not appropriately covered on the application, so that the committee can better assess your financial situation. And it's an unlimited, so you can write 2 or 3 novels there if you feel like you need to. It's an unlimited space. So anything that you feel like is important in your particular financial situation that is not covered on the application, you can add that. There's a place that you can add that on the application.
And Ellen, can you just clarify the documents themselves? I believe they actually upload to the fax application, correct? They actually upload digital versions of these documents?
Yes, you upload digital versions of the documents. And if you are not familiar with that process, you can also fax it in, and I can give you the fax number. If just give me a call and I'll give you the fax number if you prefer to fax them in. Yeah. But I will say it takes a little longer. Yeah,
our experience is that if you upload the documents, then the process goes more quickly than if you fax them. So the statement down in the blue box, that is an important one for families who have multiple custodial homes or situation. We require that all parents apply for financial aid, regardless of whether you're married, never married, divorced, separated, because financial aid is actually given to the student, and they are going to look at income of all adult members that support that child. So we are asking for both parents to do that. The custody or decision making of one parent versus another, it's not a factor that's considered when making financial aid in terms of. I know this. It can be very emotional, very difficult when you have one parent who says they will pay and another parent that says they won't pay. But it's important to understand that the financial aid is not being assigned to you as the parent. It's being assigned to the student and to the child. And so we have to look at both parents as they contribute to the welfare of the student. Jill, am I saying that correctly?
You are, absolutely. And there have been a couple questions in the chat about, is the information shared from one parent to another? So if you have separate households and you are each required to apply for financial aid, the information is not shared between families. We definitely don't share that. And the process is handled entirely through fax. So dad would go on to fax and complete their portion of the financial aid application. And then mom would do the same separately, but they can't see the same information.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. But please know that whatever your situation is, please let us know. And we actually, during the registration process, so your son's accepted in February and you decided you'd like him to come to Brophy and you're going to apply for financial aid, we're going to ask you for your court documents. It's a requirement to be here at Brophy to provide those court documents to have those on file here. So we're not trying to be nosy. It's important for us to have a transparent understanding of your situation. If you are still sole custodian, or if you have joint custody, or if one parent is no longer living in this country, we need to understand what is going on. Again, it's not to be nosy, but the more we know, the better we can serve your family and provide support to your son at school, but also financially. All right, I was going to move on to the next slide. Does Jill and Ellen feel like something else we want to cover here? Okay. All right. The next one, we are going to hand off to our new executive director.
Thank you, Shelley. So just to kind of introduce most of you to the Brophy Community Foundation, some of you may be familiar. Some questions I want to just kind of make sure that I answer this evening. Simply, what is the Brophy Community Foundation? What's the relationship between the foundation and the school, Brophy College Prep? And then how does the Community Foundation support students, not only here at Brophy, but at many other private schools across Arizona? So beginning with just a high-level summary of what the Brophy Community Foundation is. It is a separate nonprofit organization from Brophy College Prep. The organization is a certified student tuition organization through the state of Arizona. As a student tuition organization, or more commonly referred to as an STO, the Brophy Community Foundation is able to receive both individual and corporate tax credit donations. A tax credit simply redirects an income tax liability from a payment owed to the state to, in this case, the Brophy Community Foundation. The Brophy Community Foundation then in turn takes these tax credit donations and helps support students and families with verified financial need afford a quality private school education such as Brophy. But we also support 37 other private schools in the state, including Loyola Academy right here on Brophy's campus. During the 2019-2020 school year, the organization supported over 2,400 students with verified financial need, which equated to approximately $8.3 million of awards spent on tuition expenses. A couple of items to note regarding the Brophy Community Foundation. BCF, or Brophy Community Foundation, has never accepted donor designated contributions. All of the tax credit donations received by the foundation go to the students who qualify for financial need. This means individuals and corporations cannot make a donation to BCF with a recommendation to support a particular student. And then the second item, by law, STOs must award 90% of the revenue that they receive from tax credit donations towards tuition expenses. The Brophy Community Foundation has always averaged about 95% being awarded back out to student aid. So those who contribute and support the Brophy Community Foundation can be certain that their dollars are are making a difference in our communities. So the Brophy funding for financial aid is made up of two separate buckets. You have the school side, which includes investments and endowments, but the majority of the financial aid budget that Shelley was referring to comes from the Brophy Community Foundation and these tax credits specifically. Since the foundation was established in 1998, it has provided thousands of students the opportunity to attend Brophy that otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity due to financial circumstances. So the Brophy Community Foundation is there to support and provide opportunities to students and families who qualify, but also if you are an individual who can help redirect a tax liability, we would appreciate that support as well. So hopefully that answered all and any questions that people had about the Brophy Community Foundation. But as Shelley said, we'll kind of stay on here. And if there are questions that come up, feel free to throw them in the chat.
So thanks, Nick. So as he said, the majority of the Brophy financial aid budget is going to come from the Brophy Community Foundation. You do not need to apply to the Brophy Community Foundation for aid. What you will do is you will still apply just one place, Brophy financial aid application, and the funding of your financial aid will primarily come from the Brophy Community Foundation, but you do not need to do a separate application to the BCF. For some of you online here who have students currently at some of the Catholic grammar schools or other schools who are receiving funding from the Brophy Community Foundation as one of those 38 schools in Arizona, you are used to applying directly to the Brophy Community Foundation for financial aid. That will change as your student is a Brophy student. You will not need to do that application to BCF. You will only do it to Brophy financial aid. Correct, Nick?
Correct.
Okay. So that's, I know, sometimes confusing for our families who are used to getting money from BCF and they are used to doing an application to BCF.
Yeah.
You do not need to do that as a Brophy student.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
All right, I'm going to move on. So usually a topic of great interest in this evening is about school tuition organizations, or the acronym STO. Nick wonderfully described what an STO is, and that the BCF is an STO that's been around since 1998, I think you said?
Yeah.
So the STO program is something that has been set up by the state of Arizona. It's not something Brophy came up with. It is a law in the state of Arizona that allows individuals and corporations to direct their tax credit funds to a qualified organization, the Brophy Community Foundation being one of many. I think there's about 60 or 70 of them in the state of Arizona.
At least, yeah.
At least.
Close to 80 or so.
And so if your son applies for financial aid and gets money for financial aid, a good portion of that financial aid is going to come from BCF, which is an STO. There are many other STOs out there which you are welcome to pursue as a family. Each STO has its own rules, eligibility, applications, the way in which they pay. Some pay quarterly, some pay monthly. And the big piece being, if they allow, quote unquote, I probably should have quotes around this, recommendations for individual students. And by that, I mean some STOs are set up that allow a person to put their tax credit money and say, I would like to give this money to Johnny Smith. And if Johnny Smith is a student at Brophy, that tax credit money will come from that STO, will funnel over to Brophy, and will go against Johnny Smith's tuition specifically. Regardless of whether Johnny is getting financial aid from Brophy or not, you can direct, not you, money can come from STOs and be directed to Brophy for your son if it is coming from an STO that allows recommendations for a particular student. Some STOs allow recommendations and others do not. So as I said, each STO has their own rules and eligibility and qualifications and how they work. So say you apply for financial aid, Brophy says, we're going to give you, let's say, $6,000. And you're like, well, I need some more money to help pay tuition. You are allowed to stack financial aid along with STO funds outside of Brophy. So you can go to one of these many other STOs. And if you have colleagues, coworkers, neighbors that have the ability to direct their tax credit money to an STO, you can set up an account in your son's name. If it's an STO that allows for recommendations, you can say, please put this money in for my son, Johnny Smith. That STO will then turn around and pay Brophy. Say $1,000 gets put into that account. That $1,000 comes over to Brophy. You now have the $6,000 plus financial aid plus $1,000 from an STO. You are allowed to stack STO funds along with Brophy financial aid. And you can get STO funds from various STOs. So I think you can have multiple STO funds coming in from multiple STOs along with financial aid. Correct, Ellen?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Any money that is received from an STO goes directly to tuition. It doesn't go to pay for lunch. It doesn't go to pay for stuff they buy over the varsity shop. It goes directly to your tuition balance, your tuition requirement. So where do you get a list of these STOs? How do you find out about them? What are their names? What are their rules? The Arizona Department of Revenue has a list of certified STOs, and the link there is on the screen. It is your responsibility to research them. Maybe you ask your person who does your taxes. Maybe you ask people that you know who have used STOs. Brophy works with pretty much every STO that is a certified STO out there. I believe, Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, we will work with any STO that wants to work with us. Some STOs are specifically for a particular type of school. Like, for instance, there's a Jewish student tuition organization, which obviously is not going to designate funds towards Brophy, even though we have Jewish students who attend here. Also, like we said before, Catholic education, Arizona does not direct funds to Brophy because we are Jesuit rather than diocesan. So most of them, I would say probably 90%, we're more than happy to work with. Now, we don't work with 90% of the STOs that are out there simply because they haven't reached out to us. But if an STO reaches out to us, we will absolutely work with them.
So if you would like to pursue the route of helping discount your tuition at Brophy, besides applying for financial aid, which we encourage all of our families to do, you can also explore the avenue of the STO, School Tuition Organization, which allows individuals to put their tax credit, Arizona tax credit money towards a qualified organization that can then help discount your son's tuition. Now, the dollar amount that changes a little bit each year as far as how much that Arizona tax credit is for private schools. This year, if you're filing singly, it's $1,183, and filing jointly married, it's $2,365. Now, when I'm saying you cannot do this for your son. That's probably one of the most important things I'm going to try and explain correctly here is that the Arizona law, I'm going to read this here, prohibits parents from directing their own tax credit contribution to their own child or swapping donations with a friend or family member to benefit each other's child. So you cannot say, well, I owe $1,000 to the Arizona state this year. I'm going to go to an STO, set up an account with my son's name, and I'm going to put my $1,000 in, and that's going to benefit my child. You are not allowed to do that. by Arizona law. And you also are not allowed to say to your next door neighbor, I'll do $1,000 for you and you do $1,000 for me. That's against the law as well. But you are allowed to have grandma and grandpa do it. I hope I'm saying that right. That's okay. Grandparents, right?
Yes.
Yes. Neighbors, coworkers, whoever that is paying Arizona taxes you can work with in terms of setting up an account in STO. So we don't recommend any specific STO. As Alan says, we will work with just about any of them that want to work with us. So let's see. Am I missing anything on the STO piece?
Oh, and there's a great question in the chat. Maybe we should just talk about it. How does money received from an STO get credited against tuition if they're on the 10-month payment plan?
Yes, I was typing in the response.
I figured you were probably easier to
basically, when the money comes in, it is applied to the next tuition payment that is due. If you get $10,000 come in at once, obviously that's going to be more than a month's tuition. So it's just going to apply towards the next tuition payments. That could be it could be 8 tuition payments that it's going to cover. And then you won't owe anything until February of next year. So it just, however they come in, it just automatically is applied to the next tuition payment that's due.
Great. And just a quick comment. Because the Arizona law doesn't allow you to do your tax credit to your own child, as Nick mentioned on the previous slide, when it comes time to do your taxes, our favorite STO, of course, is the Brophy Community Foundation. But if you want to consider looking into the BCF for your own tax credit donation to help our students, here on campus, make it affordable and be able to even come to a place like Brophy. We would love for you to consider the Brophy Community Foundation as your preferred STO. All right, I'm gonna go to the next screen. So we've talked about Brophy Financial Aid is really gonna be the biggest chunk of where you're gonna get help to pay for tuition. And then there's STOs. There are also some other opportunities outside of those two big pieces that can help you discount your tuition. There are independent community scholarships out there. Knights of Columbus, Daughters of Charity, your local parish. The Catholic Community Foundation, actually, I just got an update on this today. They traditionally have done quite a bit of scholarships for boys and girls who are going to be attending Catholic high schools. This year, by now, the process, typically, I think everything's due in like October, November. They are not doing their scholarship program this year because of COVID. And so they are going to do it again next year. And so typically that would just be for 8th graders. That's kind of their thing, is they let 8th graders apply for these special scholarships for high school. My understanding, based on some information I got today, is next fall, they are going to open their scholarship program to 8th graders and 9th graders because they are not doing it this year for our current 8th graders. So kind of tuck that in the back of your mind. I think they open it up in August, September, sort of early fall. That might be something you want to look into next fall. Now there will be sort of twice as many kids going for the same scholarship dollars because it'll be 8th graders and 9th graders. But that is our understanding, is they are going to make that available to 9th graders next year. So something new that we haven't come across. So there are independent community scholarships. Those you really have to research on your own. Call your local Rotary. I know the parish that I live in up in Anthem. There was a time when the Knights of Columbus gave every student who went to a Catholic high school a couple $100 each year. And there was no application. You just had to show a letter saying that you were going. So it's worth a phone call, looking online to any of the local organizations in your community. There is another state program. This is separate from STOs, but something called the Empowerment Scholarship Account, ESA. And this is run by the Arizona Department of Education, where the STOs is under the Department of Revenue. This is under the Department of Education. And these scholarship dollars are specific for students with special needs and circumstances. They have a very thorough list on their website, which I've listed here, as far as what those circumstances are. I listed a couple, whether your son has a disability. I believe if a parent has a disability, that qualifies as well. If they're active military, if the student had a parent who died in the military, if they're coming from an Indian reservation. There's some qualifications if you're coming from a failing school or a school with maybe a D or F grade. There's a long list on there, so it's worth checking out that website. And you apply directly to the Department of Education for these funds, and then they in turn pay Brophy. The important thing here is that if you get money from ESA, you cannot stack it or use it with STO money. So you can only use the money from ESA. And for some families, they might get a significant amount of money from ESA, and that's enough to cover or to help, cover the tuition need that family has. But in some cases, it might only be a portion, and they may get more money from Brophy Financial Aid and or STOs. So you do have to kind of look into it. And I think I'm saying this right, is I believe they do sort of run out of money as the year goes on, or as the window happens in terms of applying. So I don't think it's an unlimited amount of money that they sort of have a chunk of money and then it eventually is gone. Do you know if that's true, Ellen?
I do not know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure where I heard that from. So, but if you think you might fall into one of these qualifications, definitely take a look at ESA. And then the last piece of tuition funding options would be that there actually are loans out there. We have, almost no one does it, or well, I think Ellen said she's only seen maybe one over the years. I mean, it's not a popular thing to do. Most people wait for college to do the whole loan thing, but there is a loan opportunity out there. But most of our families find between financial aid and STOs, they can get what they need through those programs. But one that we do have some families use, if you have a 529 plan set up, you are now allowed to withdraw up to $10,000 per year to help pay secondary, high school education out of a 529 plan. They're set up with the idea of college payments, but I believe the tax law changed in 2018 that allows you to now use a 529 withdrawal for high school. So if you have one of those, you can use that to use as well. And oops, I forgot something. Under independent community scholarships, if you work for the Diocese of Phoenix in a capacity, you're a teacher at one of the Catholic schools, or you're a staff member in one of the Catholic organizations, there is a special scholarship called the Crozier Scholarship, which is for employees of the Diocese of Phoenix. And I'm not sure what the amounts of that are, but that is available as well. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. I can figure out how to do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I couldn't catch any of the chat questions as I was sharing my screen. I was afraid it was gonna confuse everything. So I did not see one chat question, but my understanding is Ellen and Jill answered the majority of them. So I don't know if we want to go through any of them that aren't answered yet, or if people want to unmute and answer questions, or let's see, it's about 7 o'clock, about an hour, which is kind of what I expected. Are there any questions, Jill or Ellen, that I need to?
There's one good one that regarding STO funds and when when they are applied to tuition. And so my understanding is that they're applied to a student's individual account when they're received by Brophy.
Yes, that is correct. And they are applied to the next tuition payment that is due. So if you're on the monthly payment plan and this year you're paying $1,595 a month, and I get money in from an STO that totals $4,000, that's going to cover about 2.5 tuition payments. So if it comes in November and it covers November's tuition payment, December's tuition payment, half of January's, then you're not going to owe anything until January.
Ellen, can you answer the question about the carryover of excess? I know we've had this question before, and I don't recall what the answer to that is.
Are we talking about excess for STO?
So yeah, if somebody has more STO funds that come in and their tuition is covered, and say there's $1,000 excess left over, what happens to that excess?
Okay. If STO money comes in and it creates a credit balance on your account, so your tuition is paid in full, then the first thing that I do is I look to see if you paid any tuition in. And if you paid tuition in that year, I'm going to give that money back to you as a reimbursement for the money that you already paid in for tuition. If I have reimbursed you for everything that you paid in and there's still a credit balance, then we send it back to the STO. The school cannot keep it. Money that's awarded in one academic year cannot be held by the school to pay for tuition in a subsequent academic year. That is part of the regulations that govern STOs. So I have to return it to the STO. The STO may be able to hold it for you. You'll need to contact the STO.
Great. Somebody's asking about the Sally Mae loan. I know we've had almost no experience with that. Jill or Ellen?
Yeah, you just apply. The link is there. You just apply for the loan, and then Sally Mae sends the funds to us in a lump sum. And I think it's a lump sum, I believe, and then you make payment arrangements through Sally Mae. I think you can stretch out your payments over 3 years. So if you need an extra boost, say in your son's junior year, then you can get money from Sally Mae, which will pay the tuition, and then you have 3 years to pay that off.
What other questions about work study, about timeline, about what else? What else can we?
Well, there was just a question about work program for students who hold jobs outside of school. And I've actually had a lot of questions about that lately. That's called the value added program. If your son has been awarded work study, the assumption is that your son is going to work on campus to work that off. However, if your son holds a job off campus, then what we will allow you to do is pay for half of his work study. So if he's been awarded 500, pay 250, and then Brophy will match the other 250. But he has to show us a pay stub that equals $250. So then he doesn't have to work on campus because he's also working off campus. So you pay us half of the work study award, Brophy matches the other half, and then he's done.
Mm-hmm. The person who's asking our private message. Okay. What else? What other questions do people have? Does anybody have a question about admissions or about the email that came out today about the admissions video? Since Mike and I are here to answer whatever questions. Let me see, we got a couple more questions. Can they help at lunch for work study? Is work study only at after school hours? Great question. So most of the work study opportunities are outside of the typical school work hours in terms of after school, weekend events, evening events. But there are some opportunities for boys to do what we call a TA position, where if they have a free period for the semester, say they have a flex period, a study hall, they can work with our work study director and find a place on campus to be assigned for that period and to help out that office. So in the admissions office, we typically have a student TA for one period a day. And that student, instead of going to study hall, he comes here And over the course of the semester, the hours he works in our office will more than adequately cover his work study requirement. So we do have kids who do TA positions during the day. We also do have opportunities in the summer for students to work off their work study commitment. And depending on the summer position, some of them are kind of hot, sweaty outdoor jobs, and the boys get double credit for coming on campus for a few hours, maybe helping the maintenance staff move desks, take down classrooms while we prepare for summer cleaning. So, but the majority of it is outside of the typical school work day.
I'm going to add something to it, Shelley.
Yep.
Hi, everybody again. I know on those summer things, we're not going to give you a shovel and a ditch and start digging ditches and things like that. Not that type of work. But the other cool thing is that our own Jonathan Landanya, who's on the other call, did work opportunities and work study here. And he started, without any experience at all, started filming football practices and games. He ended up getting a college scholarship to ASU to do the same thing. And it turned into, he got a full ride to ASU because he worked in the athletic department there for the whole time. So there's jobs in helping with the equipment, with the athletic directors. There's managing sports teams and things like that can be used as well. So there's a lot of different options. Last night I had some students working with me in the alumni office, and they were making some phone calls with me, and they got help that way as well. So what they do, depending, anytime they work with me to help go to a school and do a school visit, if they're helping at open house, right, giving tours of campus and things like that. So really about any time that they're giving back to Brophy is what we're going to do. And then there's some assigned jobs like Shelley's talking about with being a TA or working for a particular department.
We use boys in our office for tons of admissions events for work study. And, most of the boys just love it. They help go on a school visit. They help us with a school fair at night. One of our members, if any of you were on any of our virtual information nights earlier in the fall where we might give a presentation, we had boys speak. Some of those boys were doing work study credit hours for that. So it's really, there's more than enough opportunities for a student to get their hours in. Let's see, we've got a couple more questions here.
And as you know, they do a much better job than I do when they sell school.
That's not true.
I'm useless.
A couple non-financial aid questions. Are we going to have another open house? We may do something in the spring, but we're not planning another open house during this application window of between now and January 29th. But we are doing campus tours. Mike Ward is the campus tour director extraordinaire. It has been kind of the main way our families have seen campus this fall, given COVID. And he is closing in on coming up on his 200th personal tour this fall. He has done over almost 200 personal tours this fall. It's been amazing. He's gotten about 9 million steps in on campus. So just give me a call if you'd like to do a tour. We are booking in January right now. So give me a call tomorrow and I can get you on our calendar. Let's see. Are the referrals required in the checklist? So every student should have a checklist. There are 6 recommendations on that checklist. We're looking for 4 from school: English, math, teacher of choice, principal, an extracurricular, something he does outside of the classroom, and a religious one if you go to a church or house of worship. If you do not, then the parent can fill the religious one out. So yes, we were looking for all 6 of those for his file.
Yeah, and just for clarification, a lot of the other in the diocesan schools, they'll want a religious recommendation that will dictate what your tuition is going to be. So for Catholics in parish that are up to date as being in the books over there at their school, at their parish, they'll get a Catholic rate. We don't do that at Brophy since we're not part of the diocese. So the religious recommendation for us, if it's an option or it's a possibility, is really another adult leader that will know your son, that give us a perception of who he is. So it's 5 to 6 adults that that can let us know who he is, recommendation-wise.
Mike, do you want to answer about shadow days and any shadow days as of yet in our tours after school or during the school day?
Shadow days are still, we're going to wait and see how the world is when we get back in January. I'd love to do that, but for social distancing purposes in our classrooms, that makes it sometimes difficult. Tours, to be honest, right now, I like doing it during the day just so you can see a little bit of action in school, but during the after school hours as well. So we're here, and I can always have students to help out as well, so you can ask all kinds of questions. Our after school, 2:45 to 3:30, and if you like robotics and things, they go to about 5 or 5:30, plus we got some sports teams. So if you want after school so your son doesn't miss school, we can set things up to about 5:30 in the afternoon if you want to see campus. Not a problem.
Ellen, can you answer the question about Lisa's question about STO funds received this spring to next fall tuition?
Yes, I'm happy to. Unfortunately not. Your son is, the spring is still part of the 2020-2021 school year, and your son is not a student at Brophy for that time. I generally start receiving STO funds for the fall semester. So this fall coming up is going to be the 21-22 school year. I typically start receiving STO funds in June, and I can use them at that point. But if they're earlier than that, the STO has to designate what year the award is being made. And if the award is made in the 2021 school year, I can't use it because your son is not a student in the 2021 school year. And the STO will tell me what year the funds are being awarded in.
I see people, people are starting to jump off. Understandably, it's been a really exciting 70 minutes of financial aid. But I want to leave everyone, we're going to stay on and answer questions, but that, this is a very important process, the financial aid process. But we also recognize it's very unique to your family situation. This is not a cookie cutter situation. You make this much money, you're going to get this many dollars. We are going to look at all of the components of your financial situation, which is often personal things that are going on about your job or about, maybe your custodial situation. So please know that we recognize this is not necessarily the format or forum to ask those kinds of personal questions. So do not hesitate to call us. We will try and answer it best we can, or as very obviously tonight, I relied extremely heavily on Ellen and Jill to help answer the questions. Even though this presentation is generally done by the admissions office, it's really the two of them that are, do the heavy work of financial aid. So I can get answers from them if need be, but we're happy to talk to you about whatever your situation is and try and provide you some guidance of, well, we've seen this in the past, or, this is how things typically go. But this is, this tonight when we log off, this is not the end of that discussion. Call us, email us, come in and talk to us. We are doing a recording of this, which I'll have to figure out somehow tomorrow with IT how to download it and send it out. I have no idea how to do that. So
I can do it.
All right. Well, Mike, Mr.
I can only do a few things, but I know how to do that. And the other thing too, we've been doing this in the past on the day of our testing. And so we've always done 2. And so I imagine, without really speaking to Ellen or Jill or Nick, Shelley, I did mention it, but I would imagine we may do this again, please.
Maybe.
Just because, so if you have friends that maybe missed it or different ideas, we'll look into maybe doing this again. But at least we'll get the recording out so people can see this.